Next one, select the correct sequence of the cranial meninges occurring centrifugally. We know that the meninges, that is the outermost covering of the brain and the spinal cord, right? Outermost covering of the brain and the spinal cord. They are asking about the correct sequence of the cranial meninges. Now first the question is, what are the cranial meninges? What are the functions of that, right? Our brain and spinal cord is covered with the covering of the connective tissue, which are called the meninges, right? Which are called the meninges. These meninges are, when we talk about the arrangement, right? So what are the meninges? Outermost covering of brain and spinal cord, right? Outermost is the dura mater, the first one, right? Second one is the arachnoid, and the third one is the pia mater, or which is also known as the pia mater. As you can see here, right, the outermost is the dura mater, the arachnoid is that, and this is the pia mater, and the space between the arachnoid and pia mater is known as the subarachnoid space, right? When we talk about the dura mater, poorly vascularized, right? Subarachnoid, dura mater is poorly vascularized, then pia mater is highly vascularized, right? It is highly vascularized, right? Now between the pia mater and the arachnoid mater, right, there is subarachnoid space. Subarachnoid space present in between arachnoid and pia mater, right? That is the space present in between the arachnoid and the pia mater, right? Now what will happen? See here, in that space, arachnoid space, the CSF formation has occurred, right? CSF is formation occur. What is that CSF? That is the cerebrospinal fluid, right? Cerebrospinal fluid. There are three meninges, there are three species which infect the meninges and causes the meningitis, right? Which infects the meninges and causes the meningitis. What is that meningitis? As we know that split that word, where the word itis is used somewhere, itis, that means the inflammation, right? Itis somewhere, it means it is related with the inflammation, right? Split that word in, that means inside flammation, right? Inside the flame, right? Inside flame like characters, actually inside flame like characters. And what is the characters of the flame? That is the burning, pain, redness, and the swelling, right? Burning, pain, redness and the swelling. So the word it is used where the inflammation is there, right? So there are three species which causes the meningitis, that is Neisseria meningitidis, Haemophilus influenza, right? So all these infect the meninges, right? If when some infection enters in trying to enter inside the meninges, then the amount of CSF will be increased to inhibit the entry of in the entry of that foreign particle into the inside the brain tissue, right? And that's why it causes sometimes it the head is looks like the tomb like head, right? It looks tomb like head, and that condition is known as the hydrocephaly. Due to the excessive accumulation of the CSF, the condition is known as the hydrocephaly or cephalus. That condition is known as the hydrocephalus, right? Clear? So the correct sequence of the cranial meninges occurs centrifugally, right? Centrifugally. What does it mean? That means inner to outer, right? That means inner to outer. So pia mater is innermost, right? The arachnoid is the middle one, and the outermost is the dura mater. So the answer is C. Clear? Now come to the next question, which is not a part of the limbic system. Now the question is that what is the limbic system actually, right? What is that limbic system? Actually, the limbic system is named for the medial border of the temporal lobe, right? It is used for the medial border of the temporal lobe. Clear? It is used for the medial border of the temporal lobe. What is actually limbic system? It is a cortical loop surrounding the corpus callosum and the thalamus, right? What is limbic system? Loop of cortical structures, loop of the cortical structures surrounding the corpus callosum and the thalamus, right? Now the question is, what is the corpus callosum? That is the thick broad band of the white matter which connects from inside, which connects the cerebral hemisphere from inside, right? Which is known as the corpus callosum. So now limbic system is also known as the emotional brain, right? So all kind of emotions, the pleasure, the anger, the love, the anxiety, and all things, right? All these emotions are comes through through that brain, the part of brain which is called the limbic system. It is actually the cortical structure, loop of the cortical structure which surrounds the corpus callosum and the thalamus, right? These limbic system have some nuclei called the nuclei of limbic system. Is first one is the amygdala, and second one is the hippocampus, right? First one is the amygdala and second one is the hippocampus. Now the question is, what is the function of amygdala and what is the function of the hippocampus? So we can say that amygdala is responsible to read the fearful expressions of the other or to express our own fear, right? That's why the question asks, if we remove the amygdala, then what will happen? If we remove the amygdala, we produces an animal that lacks the fear and aggression. That amygdala is responsible for fear, fearful expression and for expression of the aggression, right? For the aggressiveness. So if that amygdala get removed or damaged, right, then what will happen? We produce an animal right? We produce an animal who lacks, that means absence of fear and aggression, right? The person whose amygdala gets damaged not able to recognize the fearful expression or the aggressive expression of the other as well, right? So when we talk about the hippocampus is also known as the index of memory, right? It is known as the index of memory. Why it is called the index of memory? Hippocampus, together with the other parts of the cerebrum, it helps in the formation of the memory, right? It's a kind of the index for recall of events with the associated memories. For example, at that time we are doing that same as is in that condition. When we are in your age, then we will do that, right? In his marriage, that events will be happened, and all these things that happened, clear all the events or the accidents or the anything, right? So when we recall our past, that is responsible. It's to recall that events, the hippocampus is responsible. So that limbic system is known as the emotional brain, right? That limbic system is known as the emotional brain, right? So we the informations which is necessary for you, limbic system is there. Now the question is, which is not the part of the limbic system? Outer cerebral cortex, amygdala, hippocampus, both of them are the nuclei of the limbic system, right? So they are the part of the limbic system. Both A and B, no, that option is also wrong, right? So the outer cerebral cortex is not the part of, he is talking about the not, right? So not the part of the limbic system. Rest of them is the part of the limbic system, right? So the next question is, so the answer is A. Come to the what is not true for the hypothalamus, right? Hypothalamus, what is the hypothalamus? Actually, it is the part of the diencephalon, right? It is the part of the diencephalon, and diencephalon is the part of the forebrain. Clear? Diencephalon divided into three: thalamus, hypothalamus, and the epithalamus, right? That thalamus is known as the gateway of the cerebral cortex, right? That thalamus is known as the gateway of cerebral cortex. Why it is called the gateway of the cerebral cortex? Because all the sensory inputs and the other informations going to the cerebrum, which is passed by the way of the synapses in the thalamus, right? Which is passed by the way of the synapses in the thalamus, which is heavily interconnected with the limbic system, right? That's why without permission of the thalamus, no information enters inside, right? That's why it is called the gateway of the cerebral cortex, right? Now come to the hypothalamus. That hypothalamus integrates and controls the various visceral activity, right? It integrates and controls the various visceral activities, right? Various visceral activities. Actually, it is the thermoregulatory center, right? Hypothalamus is the thermoregulatory center. It is responsible for our behavior, right? Behavior control, the sexual behavior, and all these kind of behaviors is related with the hypothalamus. It is our satiety center, right? That is the satisfactory center, right? So it maintains the homeostasis, right? That means the it maintains the internal environment constant, right? It influences the respiration, the heartbeat. So that's why the hypothalamus is very important for us, right? And when we talk about the epithalamus, it is the small region, right? It is the small region in which two kinds of nuclei are there. First one is the pineal gland, acts as a nuclei for the epithalamus, right? And second one is the habernular nuclei. Habernular nuclei. Clear? So all these are called, this is the diencephalon and the thalamus, hypothalamus and the epithalamus. So now what is the function of the what is not true for the hypothalamus? It is thermoregulatory center. It is true because hypothalamus acts as a thermoregulatory center, right? So the answer is not A, right? It is not A. It controls, regulates the urge for drinking and eating. Exactly, it controls the urge for the drinking, eating, right? So this option is also wrong. According to that dorsal part of the midbrain, no, it is not dorsal part of the midbrain, right? So according to that, and present at the base of the thalamus, is it right? It is right, right? So The correct answer according to that is which is not true for the hypothalamus. That means it is not the dorsal part of the midbrain, right? So the answer is 20th answer is C. Now come to the next one. The grayish appearance of cerebral cortex referred to as the gray matter. This is due to the cell bodies of the neuron, right? This is due to the cell bodies of the neuron. It's not associated with the association areas and the myelinated nerve fibers, right? It is related with the cell bodies of the neuron. So the grayish appearance due to the cell bodies of the neuron, right? Brainstem is formed by, right? What is brainstem actually? The brainstem includes the midbrain, the pons and the medulla oblongata, right? It is made up of the midbrain, the pons and the brainstem is the combination of midbrain plus pons plus medulla oblongata, right? So what will happen? That pons and medulla oblongata is the part of the hindbrain, right? So can we say that the brainstem is the combination of the midbrain and the hindbrain? Yes, we can say, right? So forebrain, no forebrain involved in that. That's why the answer is the C. Clear? The answer is C. As we know that forebrain is divided into three parts, that is cerebrum, olfactory lobes and the diencephalon, right? Midbrain is known as the mesencephalon, which extends from pons to the diencephalon, right? The anterior portion of midbrain carries the cerebral peduncles, right? They carries the cerebral peduncles, and the posterior portion forebrain is formed by three parts: cerebrum, olfactory lobes and the diencephalon, right? Cerebrum is the largest part of the brain, right, which is responsible for the various kind of activities, right? Our thinking and all learning, all kind of learning pattern is related with that cerebrum, right? That forebrain. Then the next one is the midbrain, right? That cerebrum is divided into two parts, that is the right cerebral hemisphere and the left cerebral hemisphere. Our right side activity is controlled by the left cerebral hemisphere and left side activities is controlled by the right cerebral hemisphere, right? And both cerebral hemisphere is interconnected with a broad band of white matter which is known as the corpus callosum, right? Which is known as the corpus callosum. So the whole, that is the basal ganglia, the limbic system and all these things are part of the cerebrum, right? They comes under the parts of the cerebrum. The lobes are there, the frontal lobe, the parietal lobe, the occipital lobe and the temporal lobe, right? The frontal lobe is responsible for the creative ideas which are present in the cerebrum, right? Parietal is responsible for the hot, touch, pain, cold receptors, right? It also helps in the dressing sense to read the maps, right? To read the clock, all these things, these are related with the parietal lobes. Temporal lobe, which is present just behind the auditory, that is ear, that's where the auditory center is present in the temporal lobe. It is related with the hearing, right? And the last one is the occipital lobe, which is present just behind that, right? And it is responsible for the vision. Clear? So that's why, so cerebrum is the largest part and have important role, right? And when we talk about the midbrain, the anterior portion of midbrain carries the cerebral peduncles, right? And the posterior portion of midbrain is called the tactum, right? What is that tactum? When we see the tactum, because that tactum contains 4 little lobes, right? That tactum contains 4 little lobes. These 2 upper, right? And these 2 in lower, right? Just because of 4 lobes, that it is known as the corpora quadrigemina, right? It is called the corpora quadrigemina, and these are called the superior colliculi, these are called the inferior colliculi, right? These are called the superior colliculi, these are called the inferior colliculi. Superior colliculi is related with the visual activities, right? Superior colliculi is related with the visual activities, and inferior colliculi is related with the auditory, right? That is related with the hearing. So this is important actually from the examination point of view. Sometimes these are the question of pre-medical, right? That's why I tell you here, the inferior colliculi are the part of the auditory pathway. It relaying the auditory nerve impulses from the receptors for hearing into the ear to the thalamus, right? So midbrain, even midbrain has a number of nuclei, right? They has the number of nuclei midbrain contains several nuclei, right? Which kind of nuclei are there? Left and right substantia nigra. It's very important actually, that substantia nigra, right? Which are the large and darkly pigmented nuclei. Clear? And second is the left and right red nuclei, right? And these red nuclei is looking reddish just due to the presence of the iron containing rich blood supply, and iron containing pigment is also there, right? So these nuclei are present, and this substantia nigra is very important because the neurons which releases the dopamine, right, which releases the dopamine, neuroinhibitory neurotransmitter, right? Dopamine which extends from the substantia nigra to the basal ganglia, right? And if these neurons get degenerated or the injured, then the patient may suffer from the due to the lack of that dopamine, right? Due to the absence or lack of the dopamine, patient suffers from the Parkinson's disease. Patient suffers from the Parkinson's disease, which is also known as the Parkinsonism, right? And when we talk about now the last one, that is the hindbrain, right? That hindbrain is made up of three, that is the cerebellum, which helps in maintenance of the balance, right? Second one is the pons, and third one is the medulla oblongata. Right? That cerebellum helps in the balancing, right? It maintains the posture, but remember one thing, it cannot helps in the initiation of the movements. That is the function of the basal ganglia, right? That is the function of the basal ganglia. Clear? So that is the question of pre-medical. Actually, the basal ganglia helps in the initiation and the movements, helps in the initiation and the termination of the movements, but cerebellum is maintain the posture and it balance, right? It doesn't help in the initiation and termination of the movements, right? So that is the function of the cerebellum. So now come to the next question. Come to the 23, that is the term which is given four round lobes present on the dorsal portion of the midbrain, right? We already discussed here, right? That is called the tactum, and in tactum four round lobes, that's why it is called the corpora quadrigemina, right? So the answer is C. Now the question is, so answer is C, then what is the corpus callosum here? What is that corpus callosum? The corpus callosum is the broad band of white matter, right? It is the broad band of the white matter which connects the cerebral hemisphere from inside, right? That cerebral hemisphere divided into two parts by a longitudinal fissure, right? And form the right and left cerebral hemisphere. So that broad band of white matter is known as the corpus callosum, right? Now what is the cerebral aqueduct? That cerebral aqueduct is present in the brain ventricle. When we talk about the cerebral aqueduct, so see, to understand that cerebral aqueduct, we have to know about the ventricles of brain, right? There are 4 ventricles which are present in the brain. These are the cavities actually, right? These are the cavities. First ventricle, second ventricle. This is the third ventricle. This one is the fourth ventricle, right? And now what? That first and second ventricle, actually they are known as the paracele, right? They are known as the paracele, and because they are situated at the outside of that as the lateral, that's why they are also known as the lateral ventricle, right? That third one is known as the diacele. That fourth is known as the metacele, right? That paracele is connected with the diacele through the foramen of Monro, right? Foramen of Monro. And that diacele and metacele is connected with the cerebral aqueduct, which is also known as the iter, which is also known as the aqueduct of Sylvius, right? Which is also known as the aqueduct of the Sylvius. So now what? These are the brain ventricles. These are the brain ventricles, right? And these are that third diacele and metacele is connected with the cerebral aqueduct, and here in between them CSF is formed, right? CSF formation occur in between the third and the fourth ventricle. There are 3 holes, right? There are 3 holes. These are the 2 and third one is here, right? These 2 are paired, right? These 2 are the pair, and that's why they are known as the foramina of Lashka. Foramina of Lashka, and this is called the foramen of Magendie, right? This is called the foramen of Magendie. So simply that foramina of Lashka and foramen of Magendie, because they are paired, that's why the word foramina is used here, and because it is unpaired, that's why the word foramen of Magendie is used here, right? So CSF flow is occurs through these 3 holes, and again that flows with that and reached up to the subarachnoid space, right? And from that it again gets mixed with the blood, right? So these all are the ventricles of the brain and the informations related with that which are asked in the previous year's exams, right? So now you have to better understand that what is cerebral aqueduct, what is corpus callosum, and what is the corpora quadrigemina.